Hi everybody, this is Brian David Marshall coming to you from the Tournament Center at the World Magic Cup here at Gen Con in Indianapolis. I'm here with our old Tournament Center friend, Lucas Siow.
Good to be here, good to be back.
Good to be back, it's been a while.
Yeah.
We've made some technical upgrades since you've been gone.
Yeah.
Lucas, your team is in a great spot. You're with Team Canada.
Yeah.
You guys are what, like 5th, 6th, maybe coming into this round?
Into this round we were 7th. The 3 people who are the highest points all won. So I'm thinking we'll be about 5th or 4th, somewhere in that area.
So how did you guys go about choosing your decks for this event, for Standard?
You know, we all had decks that we were the most comfortable with. And basically we focused on finding the best versions of those decks. So, you know, for one guy, he wanted WMCQ with zombies. He kind of focused on zombies. Another guy, Mark, won with Nyapod, so he's playing 4-color pod. I like Delver. I've had a great 3 months with Delver, best Magic I've ever had in my life. So I was working on Delver, and kind of Alex was just tweaking, helping everywhere. You know, he didn't have any kind of preconceived biases.
Sure.
He kind of likes blue cards, but he was willing to go pod if that's what the results said. So in the end, he's on my same deck as me. We're playing the exact same 75.
So you guys are playing blue-green Delver.
Yeah, and it started kind of right after M13. I was working on blue-red and blue-green with friends. And frankly, we just couldn't get it to work. Like, we liked different parts of all of them. There was Rug. There were all kinds of good things happening, but we couldn't figure out like the best non-white list. And it wasn't until last weekend, actually, and I'm an avid reader of Moto results. I look at every event almost.
Sure.
And I saw like Todd Anderson, 402 dailies and 9th in a PTQ in like a 24-hour span.
Right, you're like,
I'm like, maybe he solved it, you know? And first thing I did is I threw it together. The main deck was perfect. I thought he fixed everything that I hated about the original versions. The sideboard I made huge changes to, and then ended up within like 3 cards. You know, he was really gracious. He kind of talked to me a little bit beforehand about kind of his rationale, his reasoning. And I think we've made some small improvements, but the deck is really good, and it's really great.
And it speaks to the value of like really paying attention and networking and reaching out to people who are successful. Let's take a look at what makes blue-green Delver tick.
Yeah.
Come on over here, and we'll start with the old standby. Obviously, Delver Secrets, 4 copies.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
Why do you love this card so much?
You know, simply it's free wins. Like, there are games where you go turn 1 Delver, it flips, you mana leak, or you snag, or you gut shot or something. Your opponent's just never in the game. You know, it's such an efficient threat a lot of the time, and it lets you play. It encourages you to play with instants and sorceries, which I just love to play with. You know, those are the tricky cards. I think a lot of people will tell you they enjoy kind of interacting with your opponent, and you know, and it lets me be aggressive, which you know is something that I really enjoy. You know, you don't have to have answers to all your opponent's things like in a control deck. You get to just kind of ask questions more.
It feels much more almost like Legacy-like when you're playing Standard.
Exactly.
Where you're going for. Let's talk about a guy who's been doing big things in Standard, doing big things in Modern, doing big things in Legacy. Snapcaster Mage, 4 copies.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's nothing you can really change about that. He does everything. He's more ponders to find your lands when you play a lot of low land counts. He's more Vapor Snag to get the last few points in. With Quirion Dryad, he's 2 spells, sometimes 3 if you snag, ponder, draw 3rd.
Sure, like, you go, well. And also, you talked about it, you're encouraged to play with these instants and sorceries because of Mr. Delver over here.
Yeah, I mean, I think blue-green is the most synergistic version of this deck. You know, white maybe has more angles or more powerful cards on their own, but it doesn't have the raw synergy that this deck has. Okay,
so let's take a look. Phantasmal Image. This is the last guy that's pretty familiar to the Delver decks that we see in the blue-white lists. What is this guy generally doing? He's like 2 more Phantasmal Images.
He's often copying your Snapcasters. He's often, if you turn 1 Delver flip, you know, you're slamming that image copy. You got 2 3/2s on turn 2. Hard to lose that kind of game. Finally, you just need to kill Geist. That's a kind of a prom card for you.
It becomes a Necrotal for the Geist of St. Traff.
Yeah.
It's legendary. It doesn't target when it comes into play, so you get to kill both. You get to you lose your guy, but you also get to kill that. So
and in the board, there's other things going on. So I guess we'll.
Sure.
You know.
So now there's two sets of creatures new to M13 that get added to this. The next set of creatures, and this is what makes the deck really kind of got me very excited when we got to watch in the feature match area. Tell me about Quirion Dryad.
I mean, first of all, against any non-Vapor Snag opponent, Quirion Dryad is just an absolute house. These days, everyone is playing kind of very cheap, efficient removal to kill Delvers because you can't, you know, murder anybody because you're going to get mana leaked. So no one is equipped to kill like a 3/3. Right. And you know, they're either whip flaring you or they're gut shotting you or tragic slipping. So this guy is just humongous kind of in this format. and he lets you attack from a different angle than small creatures. He's just a humongous guy, and this version of Delver that I'm playing has a lot of cheap situational cantrips, and kind of to reduce the situationalness of those cantrips, you have Quirion Dryad who's just getting bigger, you know.
Right, really very much reminiscent of when Quirion Dryad was first printed, and people were playing Miracle Grow and Super Grow decks.
Sure.
Very, you know, lots of cantrips, lots of deck manipulation. Feels very, very familiar that way.
Yeah. All the free, you got the free spells back in terms of Phyrexian mana. It's and it's really well positioned, like I said, against any Delver deck right now.
So you play this on turn 2. On turn 3, you can go like gut shot something, Snapcaster Mage, flashback, gut shot something else, and suddenly you have a 4/4 Quirion Dryad attacking. And
yeah, sure. It's exactly what happened to my Naya opponent. You know, I went turn 2 this guy, gut shot your bird. Turn 3, Snapcaster, ponder, gut shot your bird, and you know I was like hit you for 7.
Can you deal with this?
Yeah, it was not a close game then.
In a deck that has so many cheap spells, right? Everything is really like clustered in your curve, like really 1s and 2s. How do you find room for something like Talrand Sky Summoner?
Like I mentioned, the weakest part about Dryad is Delver, Vapor Snag in particular.
Sure.
And Talrand is the absolute best 4 against Delver. You know, he might not be as good against the other kind of decks in the field, but we have 4 Caverns of Souls, which help fix, but then they also make it so that your 4-drops don't get leaked or whatever. And and so he's actually pretty reasonable. With so many cantrips, you find your lands more. And he's just the best kind of anti-Delver card, and we're just pre-sideboarded in some sense.
So on this side of the sheet, you're crushing non-Delver decks.
Exactly.
And then on this is your hedge against the Delver matchup.
Yeah. And it's a really nice plan. You know, again, it's someone who gets to take all these situational gut shots. You know, you're playing against a control deck. Gut shot's not great. You're not killing any creatures.
Sure.
It's either a shock with Delver or it's a 2/2 flyer with him. And so we got to jam all these situational cards in our decks. Sometimes they're phenomenal, but sometimes they're not, but then they're still okay in this version. Whereas, you know, there's no gut shot restoration angel synergy or anything.
Right. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the deck manipulation, cheap spells, cheap cantrips. Let's take a look at the deck manipulation that goes on in here. All the things you get to do to your deck. 4 copies of Ponder, 4 copies of Gitaxian Probe, 3 copies of Thought Scour. These cards are all kind of similar, right?
Yeah. You know, some things that I've considered are Twisted Image instead of Thought Scour, but in the end, we just went with kind of the most consistent. You
just didn't want me to be truly happy?
Yeah.
That would actually just make me truly happy.
You know, I've been playing it in Modern a bit. A little bit of a spoiler there, but these are just kind of the most consistent. Thought Scour is tricky in its own way. I've interacted with my opponent's Ponders and their Delver reveals, so you know, it's a card I'm always happy to have. And
explain that for a second. So, for people who might not understand what you're saying.
All right. So when a Delver in their upkeep, they often, when they reveal, if they show you an instant or sorcery, it's still on top of their deck. They haven't drawn it yet, so you have an opportunity to Thought Scour them, mill those 2 cards. So for example, if you see a counter or maybe a Vapor Snag that answers your Dryad, you get to make sure that they don't get access to it immediately.
And you can also do it to yourself. You look at a card for your Delver. It's not a card you want to draw, and it's not a card that's going to turn on your Delver. You can also Thought Scour yourself.
And of course, you know, with Ponder, you can take the best card out of the 3 and then mill the other 2.
Sure.
So it really does see more cards than it might initially look like because it helps filter.
Right, and all of these cards, you get to like theoretically, this is what, 11 cards, but it's really like 15 or 16 cards with Snapcaster Mage because you're always Snapcasting back Ponder or Gitaxian Probe. We saw you go Ponder in one game, right? Like 4 times. Yeah. That's like a quarter of your deck.
No, I mean, we had a lot of powerful ones in our sideboard for exactly that reason. We can see so many cards with this version. You get paid off a lot by having really specific bullets to answer your opponent. Right.
And unlike other Delver decks, what you're doing with all that is making your Quirion Dryad into like a monster.
Of course, or making free 2/2s, you know.
Or making free 2/2s. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's talk about some of the control elements, things that actually do something, interact with your opponent. 4 copies of Gut Shot. This has just become...
This has become kind of standard. It's good against Delver, not phenomenal, but good. It's insane against all the Nyapod decks or any of the kind of green-red.
Why is it so good against Nyapod?
The only way they really beat you is by kind of getting ahead on board before you can kind of catch up. And all of those draws involve Llanowar Elves or Birds of Paradise or Abyssin's Pilgrim or something like that nature. So, you know, if you get that, they're not getting ahead quickly. If they keep a hand that's heavily reliant on them, you can go that, Snapcaster. They're not even in the game sometimes, you know. It really helps control the speed of decks.
3 copies of Mana Leak. This is
a card people shave. I still love it. You know, part of it is when people shave it, then no one plays around it, and it gets better again. So I don't mind being in that kind of spot.
Vapor Snag, nobody shaves these.
No, you know, especially in our version, like you need one Dryad hit sometimes to just kill the guy. So get the blockers out for as cheap as possible.
Right. And then Mental Misstep's a card we haven't seen. You know, a lot of times we see it on the sideboard. Definitely something you want main deck.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, with Dryad, your biggest fear is Snag, and you know, so it pays for us to have some answers. Again, it helps us a little bit pre-board against Delver, and since those Dryads are helping do so much work in other matchups, right. It just makes sense to be a little bit skewed in that direction with our spells.
So if my mental count is correct, we've looked at 41 cards. That means you're playing 19 lands in this deck?
Yeah, 19. Some people play 12 cantrips and 18, but both Alex and I feel a little bit more comfortable playing more lands, and you know, we'll take our risk that we'll flood a little bit. Yeah.
The oldest deck's awesome. Let's add one more land.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not lose to our mana base.
So let's look at the mana base. 4 Cavern of Souls.
Yep.
4 Hinterland Harbors.
Yep.
And 11 basics. You called this the worst card in the deck the other day before.
Yeah, you know, it's a necessary evil. You don't really have enough green sources to get away with all the green cards you want to play, and hate Evolving Wilds. You always want a Talrand on turn 4 or Delver on turn 1.
Sure.
So I don't want to play cards that fetch, so no tap land. So, you know, this mana base, which is really not really my invention, but I think it's really the best version. You never have tap lands basically unless you draw like 4 Hinterland Harbors or something weird.
Right. Or you described a situation where you were like cavern, Hinterland Harbor.
Yeah. You should hopefully be able to always turn 4 your Talrand, and this one I think maximizes your turn 1 Delvers as well, while still giving you 10 green sources, which we were waffling between 8 and 9. That was kind of the issue, but you know, we just thought that better to be safe and maybe, you know, then sorry, I guess is the best way to do it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you play Delver. We might as well also go with a classic cliche there, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the sideboard. Broken it up into 3 slides.
Okay.
So all one-ofs here. Mental Misstep and Talrand we've already seen in the main deck. So
yeah.
I guess against Delver you bring in...
Yeah, so Delver, the Misstep and the Talrand are exactly that. They bring you up against Delver to the kind of the 4 and the 3, so that your best cards you just have a bunch of.
I assume you're taking out Dryad in that matchup?
So that's really what's interesting. All the different kind of Delver variants, you have different sideboard plans. Against some variants, yeah, you take out the Dryads. Against some, you don't. It depends kind of how they're trying to win,
sure.
And if you expect no missteps from their deck, then Dryads get better because you can easily counter their Vapor Snags. And,
okay.
But yeah, it just depends. Today I've been doing a little bit of everything, and against, in my feature match, for game 2 I was on the play, I took out the Dryads, I put in Thragtusk, I saw Runechantress play Stalker, I thought Thragtusk is too slow for that, gotta try to get him with Dryad on the draw,
sure.
So, you know, we throw it, switch it up.
And what's going on here? Mutagenic Growth, Torpor Orb?
Mutagenic Growth is a really common card these days. It saves your guys from kind of cheap removal like Killer.
Just kind of a miser's card for you?
Yeah, Whisper, Whip Flare. It kind of, like, against red decks, you kind of want ways to easily save your guys, especially Dryad. You're under pressure, so you need to get them down fast, but you don't want them to die to a cheap removal spell, so it's just kind of a catch-all that it also makes it just more difficult to play around your deck when you have all these different things going on.
Sure.
Torpor Orb's a card I'm excited about. No one else is really
not excited to play more than one copy.
Like I said, we see a lot of it. You know, it's a pretty big non-bow with Snapcaster Mage. That's obviously not the best synergy in the world, but these pod decks are getting to the point where, like Bant Pod and other pods, they're just all value, kind of just come into play abilities left, right, and center. They've cut their Thalias, they're playing Visionary.
Right.
So, you know, you literally turn off like 20 cards in somebody's deck with this
And if
card.
you can shut off a Thragtusk,
oh yeah,
that seems great.
Yeah, you know, a lot of these games are races, so all that really matters is the Thragtusk 5 life, so you shut that off. You shut off their Angels, Blade Splice, like literally every card in their deck. So, you know, people were resistant. You know, I've converted Hayne. He thought this is ridiculous. How do we play this in our Snapcaster deck? But I think, and I just saw him actually in the last round. He was playing against a Stonehorn Dignitary deck.
Oh, okay.
You know, and it was insane. it really did its job. So I think it's kind of maybe it's too cute, but so far I've been happy kind of with it. And
okay.
I think if Pod is a major player in the metagame, which I kind of expected today it would be, I think it earns a spot.
Okay, let's take a look at the next wave of cards. Sleep?
Sleep. Limited All-Stars. That's all our sideboard is.
Negate and Dissipate, we understand.
Yeah.
Jace, Memory Adept. All right, we'll get to him later. So
Sleep is, again, for these like Naya decks. A lot of the times you build up a humongous Dryad. It's like an 8/8 or something.
Right.
They can't Bonfire it. They can't Arc Trail it, so it's going to live. They're not going to combust or Crushing Vines you. But you can't get through because they just have so many Chumpers and Blade Splicer tokens and whatever. So, and maybe you've made 10 tokens with Talrand, but they have 2 Angels or something.
Right.
So Sleep just kind of lets you just push through.
Have you actually won a game with sleep today?
I did win a game with sleep. He would have been dead to any removal spell, but
Okay.
to be full disclosure. But you know, it has been. I think it's really good. Crippling Chill is something similar that some people I've seen play.
Oh, okay, sure.
It's better to Snapcaster a little bit more tricksy.
Right,
but
draw an extra card.
But sleep is kind of like a real trump in those matchups, and against tokens too. We're a little bit soft to tokens again for the chumping reasons.
Or I can even see it against zombies to some extent, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Sometimes you bring in one as like a
I don't know if you
fog.
have that time, but
Yeah, I mean we're upping our curve with zombies, so it's a little bit hard to up it even more. But
Sure.
but it could. I think one would be consideration.
where are you bringing in Jace?
So Jace is. It used to be Sword of War and pieces were in this deck, and that was kind of what Todd suggested. But
Right.
I really wanted to attack from a non-creature angle.
Okay.
Against a lot of control decks and stuff. Things like Trading Post cannot beat a Jace. You know.
So you're actually just
Oh yeah,
milling
just
them
milling
out?
them 10 at a time, maybe Thought Scouring you a couple times. You know, there's
Thought Scour, Snapcaster,
you know,
Thought Scour.
they're sitting there using their Phyrexian cores and their Wellsprings, and attacking with like creatures is kind of tough. And
I would feel like my children were fighting in that matchup.
Yeah.
I love both blue-green, and I love Trading Post.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the last slide, the last batch of sideboard cards. This card seemed awesome for you when we got to watch you play earlier.
Against zombies and against the most aggressive versions of Delver, I become kind of this like pseudo control deck with like, instead of just being like cheap creatures, it's like big creatures.
Yeah, you become the mid-rangiest, right?
Yeah, and you know, everyone knows this card gives zombies fits. It can give Delver fits depending on how they're built. It can sometimes give basically any kind of aggressive red decks or Boros-y kind of decks a fit. So like, it's something that this version gets that other people don't get. And so basically it kind of lets you attack again from like another new angle, which I'm a big fan of, like I said. And it's been doing some really good work. People don't expect it. When you take out your Dryad, you bring these in, your caverns start making this uncounterable, so it's not even bad against Delver.
Right.
You know, it's really good.
Sword of War and Peace, you mentioned the swords earlier.
Yeah, we used to have 2, we're down to 1. I could see cutting it all together. You just kind of want to have a diversified set of threats again. Just keep reiterating that, but that's kind of the truth.
And then 2 more Phantasmal Images. Where are you bringing those in?
Primarily to kill Geists.
Sure.
1 or 2 can come in against other Naya, kind of these value decks, like I said. But yeah, they're mainly there. Sometimes you bring in 1 against zombies to copy Thragtusk, but that's a little bit slow, so
Sure.
you don't bring in the both. But yeah, I mean, it's mostly there to. This is a pretty metagame deck. I don't think this is a deck you would be good every week of every year.
Sure.
But we had a very focused kind of, or at least I had a very focused kind of idea of what I wanted to beat, what I thought people were playing.
Right.
And I really tried to make sure that I was going to be beating those people.
And after 3 rounds of standard, two of you guys, both you and Alexander Hain, are playing the deck.
Yep.
And you're 5-1 combined, right?
Yeah, we're 5-1 combined. I think we're 3-0 or 4-0 against Delvers. Or no, sorry, 3-1 against Delvers, but I punted my feature match. I'm sorry, Canada. And then, you know, we've beaten some Naya and some other kind of common decks, yeah.
Okay. So, and you guys seem pretty much a virtual lock for top 32 at this point.
Oh,
with
yeah.
1 round to go.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible for us to miss. You know, obviously we'd love to be in the top 8.
Right.
That's kind of the place we were ideally hoping to be. We had a really rough start.
Yeah, the last time we had a Canadian in this tournament center, Alexander Hain was off to an 0-2 start.
Yeah, Alex and Mark, who are great players, they drafted great. Unfortunately, they were 0-2.
Right.
You know, and I can't even say I drafted well. I got a little bit lucky, and luckily Jamie, our 4th member, drafted good. And
Jamie, he was the wild card on your team, and he's crushing it.
yeah, you know, I mean, I think he did a lot of things smart. It helped. Sometimes you get to your first Pro Tour, you get a little overwhelmed. He came with Delver. He wanted to, you know, and we said, look, don't worry about trying to match up with the best players in the world on Delver. Take what you're comfortable with. Let us add some sideboard cards to, you know, help you out.
Sure.
He's playing 4 Skurrus deck, High Priest, which was Hain's kind of input, and they've been fantastic.
Awesome.
I think it's been really good. Like he's confident. Like he knows that the team is with him, and they get to help him and coach. So he's been excellent, and I'm really happy with how it's going.
Exciting. And the Canadian Magic Resurgence has been something really exciting for us to cover. Look forward to talking to you guys a lot more on day 2.
Yeah.
But in the
hopefully.
meantime, for Lucas Siow, this is Brian David Marshall signing off from the Tournament Center.